Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of Sierra Experts. My name is Justin Calario. I am a enterprise sales lead here with ThreatLocker. I originally started out in the MSP space, just recently moved over to the enterprise team. So
But
those of you that are watching this that don't have an idea or don't know what ThreatLocker already does, we are a zero trust endpoint security solution that basically blocks by default. So we allow the applications that you need to run for on a daily basis. We allow those applications to run and we block everything else, including ransomware. So when I talk about ransomware to people, what I usually just tell them is that it's the software, running in the background, maybe undetected by you or undetected by your antivirus. But what ThreatLocker does is basically, denies any application outside of the parameters of what we learned. So basically, we put an agent on the workstation, it learns the environment. And then basically, when we go into a secured state, anything outside of what we learned basically gets blocked by default. So the health report that Tate asked me to speak with you guys about is basically a feature that we added into the ThreatLocker portal probably just about a year ago that brings extra visibility to your ThreatLocker admin or to your organization as a whole. Basically showing you some of the things that we're seeing, applications that we're seeing running in the environment, different features that we offer, like the ring fencing and storage. It'll bring some of those things to light for you and say these are things that you kind of need to provide attention to, as well as a complete summary of everything that's running in your environment. So let me quickly just share this screen with you real quick so you know exactly where you can access um, the health report. So inside your health report tab, or basically you'll see this slide up in the top right hand corner, and you'll see this software health report right here. So by clicking on the software health report, it will generate a report, and this is going to be the report that I show you right here as I share this screen. Share. So just to kind of give you guys a heads up, this is a sample report. This was a health report that we generated from one of our dev teams. So literally just to provide you guys and show you some of the information that we can actually pull from the said agent. So you don't need to have an agent in a secured state in order to generate this health report. So any of your prospects that, like I said, you might be, bringing kind of ThreatLocker to the table for, you can install an agent on their workstation. Basically, when it's in that learning state, nothing's going to get blocked, so it's not going to interrupt their normal day-to-day activities. But what we can do is take the telemetry data from that agent that's been on the workstation and generate this health report. So as you can see on the first page here, it's basically just a report summary. So it's going to show you, basically the number of seats that you have deployed. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So basically, it's going to show you the amount of seats, basically that you have ThreatLocker agents on out of, however many are in the environment. This red devices not running ThreatLocker bar will actually change. So you can see right here, we've got 0.47% of the agents actually in the environment. So let's just say, we pushed out 20,000 agents. This dark blue bar is going to be way down here in the middle, basically saying, hey, half your machines have ThreatLocker installed on them. It'll go through and give you a breakdown of the devices that are basically put in secured mode. So here's an example where we would be able to say, okay, here's 206 machines. 103 of those are in a secured state. So when devices are secured, as you can see right here, users can run software or code that isn't flagged by any type of malicious activities. Anything that's not on that allow list is automatically going to be blocked. It also gives you insight into things like unused software. This is my biggest highlighting point when it comes to the health report itself. So unused software is, basically use an example as you're trying to secure your home from anybody getting inside of it. So you basically run around your house and you lock all your doors, but you leave, a few windows open for fresh air. Those open windows are vulnerabilities that somebody can, obviously, unless they're more athletic than me, can hop up and jump through a window and still get into your house. So unused software is basically that open window. If you have software that's in your environment that's not being used, bad actors can utilize that unused software as kind of a crutch in order to get into your system. So with unused software, we always like to push that out, should make that aware of clients that have that so that they can then either get with, that customer and say, hey, you have unused software. We need to get that removed off of the workstation, or basically put policies in place that keep that software in its lane using basically our ring fencing technology, which, they're going to see, you'll see a couple different portions down here about, ring fence policies and things like that. So it'll go through and it'll show you basically you have 9,000 policies that were created, in the ThreatLocker portal from these softwares and basically unused, say there's 9,000 unused policies out of 17,000. So the policies that are being created obviously aren't being hit by any of the workstations, which is then telling us, hey, this is software that's not being used. It goes through and tells you any of the whitelisting, any default deny policies that are in place. Which ones do you have that kind of reflect that? Which policies are restricting storage within your organization? So all of this, remind you, has been pulled from the agent just being sitting in the workstation. So if we have policies in place, those will actually reflect it here as policies that you've put in, to kind of harden either the restricted storage or the whitelisting policies themselves. Ring fencing policies. So ring fencing is basically the protective layer that we put on the applications that are allowed. So let's go ahead and say everybody, for the most part, uses Microsoft Office. So what we want to do is we want to make it so Office is allowed to run. So obviously I can get in, check my email and things like that. If somebody were to send me a malicious link within an email that when you click on it, it starts to run PowerShell or starts to run some sort of PowerShell process, we put ring fencing around Outlook. So what that does is makes it so Outlook cannot speak with things like PowerShell, man prompt, C script, things like that. So we can put those granular controls on Outlook itself. So if I were to click that link, PowerShell will not be allowed to run. So these ring fence policies as well will show up in here. How many policies do you have on how many applications, that are ring fenced itself? So it'll give you a breakdown down here. Here's the amount of, permitted applicate or permitted executables that we're allowed to run. Here's the amount that were denied. So it gives you a full forensic breakdown of everything that's happening on those machines. Same thing for your network. And there's a spot a little bit later on that kind of goes over the network control. How many files are being written or read or written, to a said folder, to a said server? How many files were moved or deleted? So different things that obviously will bring your attention, to their environment and be able to kind of tailor make ThreatLocker to that. This is kind of a breakdown, basically, of the applications by country or by origin. So it gives you kind of a cool colored graph chart here to basically say, the application of origin came from Australia or it came from India. And basically, coming down here basically gives you an overall of the total amount of policies, your average policy count, ideal policy count. So it'll basically tell you if you have, more policies than you basically need. This is also a very, very helpful tool. And so the health report that I'm speaking of, once you run this health report and you come across some of these areas of recommendation, once you go through, and let's just start with this first one right here. So known vulnerabilities. The agent that we have in the environment is basically saying there's devices that are still show the log4j vulnerability. So for this, if we were to go in and use this recommendation and say that we want to, update our policies to cover any application that has this log4j vulnerability, when we put that policy in place, and let's say you run this report again in 3 months, so in the next quarter, those known vulnerabilities, that log4j is going to disappear off of this report. So it's no longer going to be there, obviously, because we've put attention onto it and we've compensated with a ring fencing policy or whatever it might be. So this is actually going to change on a quarterly basis or annual basis, however it is that you guys work with your clients. But as you compensate for those with policies, these will actually drop off and be replaced with new items that could use your attention. But this is fantastic. So when you look through here, this is what's really kind of providing you with that ability to look into your client's environment and say, these are the things that we want to focus on hardening your environment. Browser extension. I just had a training on this not too long ago. And if you start going through, whether it be Chrome or Edge, and you start looking at some of these browser extensions that are on there, some of them have the ability, or some of them even have built-in keyloggers built into them. So if any of those browser extensions were to be compromised, somebody's got a keylogger sitting right there at their disposal. So basically, a lot of these browser extensions are things that you're going to want to take a look at. What are going to be used for productivity? Here's a couple of them that showed up for gaming. So, obviously you've got dev guys or maybe the CEO that wants to run Steam and, wants that to be able, to be run on his workstation. Is that something that you guys want to allow on everybody? Probably not. But it gives you kind of a breakdown, Chromium extensions, Epic Games, Candy Crush, whatever it might be. This is where you're going to go through and see some of the things that get brought into the environment, like Sue has Angry Birds on her workstation. Is that something that we want to let Sue have? I don't know. It just depends on, basically your level of involvement in what's going to be allowed to run. Personally, work computer, I wouldn't let anything run any type of games or anything that would compromise, the environment itself. But I mean, things like VPN tools, things that can obviously be used against you. These are the things that we want to basically remote desktop access. Huge things, huge talking points that obviously you want to bring ThreatLocker to the forefront, of the customer and be able to show them, look, this isn't just the software that we want you to have. This is the reason why you need it. So it's a real big selling push. Um, Applications to prioritize and review. So this is kind of a little bit of a branch off of areas recommended for review, but these are specific applications. So the new addition that we have is, we're providing, as an example, 7-Zip. 7-Zip's a great application. I've used it in the past. But basically, it'll tell you, open source file compression system, but basically, created and housed the data in Russia. So if you're, basically a DoD customer, or if you have CMMC compliance, this might be a huge no-no. This might be something that, hey, we don't want to allow this, on this client's organization. So obviously, it gives you the ability to go in and put policies in place that says 7-Zip, ring fenced, can't do this, can't do that. Or you can straight up look up and say, what's a different avenue that we could take instead of using 7-Zip? What's another application that we can use and put in where the data is not shared with Russia? But I mean, these are all the same things. PuTTY gives you, basic breakdowns as to exactly what it is and potential risks that are attached to it. So when you look at some of these, it'll be able to tell you, hey, it's got, access to the web, it's got access to your passwords. These are types of things that you obviously don't want to be in the environment, or you want to have the proper policies in place that basically keep your organization safe in case any of these were to be used against you. Levels of access. So it'll show you basically these little breakdowns right here, and it'll tell you, hey, does it have, access to your web data, access to your applications, access to your file history? So each of these applications that it's basically saying, hey, you want to prioritize these for review, and it's giving you a breakdown of why we actually need, or what the reasoning is behind that, not just basically saying, hey, I don't want you to use 7-Zip. Network traffic summary. So our network control feature monitors all inbound and outbound network traffic. So basically, if I'm a remote worker and I'm connecting to ThreatLocker's network, obviously we want it to be able to recognize my workstation. We want it to be able to connect to the right port. But mostly when I log off, we want that port to actually be closed up so it's not sitting there being vulnerable. So here's basically kind of a breakdown of inbound and outbound network traffic. This is the things that we're seeing. these are the ports that we're seeing being used. This is where we're seeing IP addresses come in from said, whatever country it might be. And it breaks it down into, this is a remote laptop, this is a marketing laptop. So depending upon how you put them in your portal as per each department, you'll be able to see that per department as well. Basically, it'll show you, as well, the data has been, compiled from the last 7 days of looking at the agent installed as well. Basically, the same thing as above, gives you kind of your outbound network traffic and where exactly that is going. Another huge helpful point of view. Give you a breakdown, especially too within certain apps. So TikTok, for example, I know that's been in the news. There's been a lot of things, surrounding TikTok and its security. But you basically can look through here and say, hey, within the past, 30 days, 78 computers have reached out to TikTok. So, I mean, is that something obviously that you want to have in your environment? Something, if not. So basically, it'll go through and it's able to tell you exactly what device it was, who the user was, and the process itself. Um, let's see. And here we go. Just another follow-up, risks associated with open ports. They'll go through and share that with you. Like I said, this information isn't going to be the same on every health report because depending upon what they have running in the environment, this might change every single time you run a report on this organization, or it might be completely different from a separate organization. Obviously, they're using different applications. This is a great tool for people that are, I don't want to say less technical, but people that aren't really familiar with a lot of the applications that might be in the system. So let me use 7-zip as an example again. Basically open sourced file compression system. We already looked at that before. Potential risks has been historically used for password cracking, allowing remote access or code distribution. I mean, it's starting to sound a little bit riskier, and then basically, countries of operation, Russia. Again, when you have compliance issues, that might be a huge red flag. The rating over here, the review rating, is a little bit, it's kind of like I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, how severely this application needs your attention. So because of the fact that it's, previously been used for, cracking passwords or encrypting files or anything like that, we're giving it a higher risk rating score. Obviously, still gives you the country of origin, and again, here are those access points. Does it has access basically to your files and folders, has access to the web, things like that. So it allows you to put in, a little bit more cautions when creating those policies for that specific application. And it goes through, pretty much any of them. Angry IP scanner, give you a background of it, give it what it has access to, and then obviously there's that threat rating again, and your access, your levels of access down here, basically as to what it has access to. Application overview, pretty much the same thing. Still going through, any said applications that you have in the environment, and this is going to be for everything. So, organizations that use a lot more applications obviously are going to have a longer list of information here. Basically down here, the appendix that gives you some examples of each application that we have. So the importance of allow listing, why you need allow listing. Here's a couple use cases. The biggest one, that I can think of is the Colonial Pipeline. So we've done things, basically where our agent would have been, incredibly helpful during, that said breach or, whatever it was, like SolarWinds. SolarWinds here was able to reach out to the internet. Whoops. Was able to reach out to the internet and grab that malicious payload to actually deliver it to the end user. So in the case of ThreatLocker, when we had clients that were involved in that SolarWinds Orion, SolarWinds wasn't allowed to reach out to the internet. Not that we knew that SolarWinds was, efficiently doing something bad, but it was, going against the protocol that we had put in place. The ring fencing, basically, we told it that it wasn't allowed to reach out to the internet. So that entire uh, the entire breach itself would have been prevented just by not allowing SolarWinds access to the internet. And it gives you a couple of breakdowns of, a few different, supply chain attacks and things like that. So that in and of itself is the whole health report. Like I said, you can go right into your own portal where you have agents installed, and you guys obviously have a few clients installed, so you would be able to go in and generate this health report, currently. I hope that gives you, kind of an idea how to better position that, but for your sales team. But, it's been a huge help with us, especially in the MSP arena, because the thing is, we have clients that are constantly looking at us and saying, hey, look, we've never had a breach. We're comfortable using our antivirus. And the thing is that the threat landscape is changing. It's constantly changing. So going to zero trust is basically the one foundation of every security stack that everybody should have. And this kind of brings some of that information that we're pulling from the organization and bringing that, to the forefront. And like I said, you're able to run this report at any time. And if you want to do it every quarter, when you work with your clients to say, hey, let's solve these applications that are still showing the log4j vulnerability. We have a way in the portal to go through, find out what those applications are, and put those policies in place. So basically, they won't affect anything. But again, I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you guys soon.